Tropical Storm Michael is almost a hurricane, taking aim at western Florida this morning. Good morning, I'm Mike Naso from the IPR YouTube Tropical Update page with the latest on Michael. Let's get right to it as of 5 a.m. Eastern Time. That is a 4 a.m. Central Time, of course. Michael was at 20.6 north, 85.5 west, moving north at 7. Winds were 70 miles an hour, 74 is a hurricane, so Michael's right on the edge of a hurricane and will probably exceed that threshold later today. And the pressure, which was about 1,000 millibars about 12 to 18 hours ago, is now down to 983 millibars. Usually around 989 or so is a hurricane. So the pressure's been falling, the winds have been rising, and you can see the wind field here. Tropical storm winds affecting Cuba and areas there of the extreme northeast Yucatan Peninsula. Areas such as Cozumel and Cancun, you guys are going to have gusty winds. The forecast from the National Hurricane Center brings Michael north and north-northwest into the Gulf by tomorrow afternoon, and then by Wednesday an acceleration towards the northeast right into the Panhandle or perhaps the Big Bend area here on the west coast of Florida as a hurricane, a strong hurricane, at least a Category 2, perhaps even a major hurricane, which would be a Category 3. So this is a serious situation along the west coast and the Big Bend area of Florida. Because of that, we now have a hurricane watch from the Alabama-Florida border all the way down to Suwannee River. And remember, we also have tropical storm watches, including Tampa Bay down here, as well as Mississippi and Alabama here. You guys are on the alert as well. And of course, we have our hurricane warning for western Cuba because Michael's almost a hurricane and it will come very close over the next 12 hours to western Cuba. If it goes between the Yucatan and Cuba, that's the Yucatan Channel, that's what they call that, it'll be in the Gulf of Mexico, and all systems will be go for intensification into a strong hurricane prior to landfall. The computer models agree this is not going to be a Florence. This is not going to sit around over the states flooding for days. So we're going to get Michael in and out. The bad news is that before it heads out, it could become a powerful hurricane and cause a lot of problems. The one thing I'd be more worried about with this, as far as flooding, is the storm surge. This area of Florida is very, very susceptible to high storm surge. The west coast, the Big Bend, even a run-of-the-mill Category 1 could cause very bad flooding. Here's the satellite imagery of Michael this morning, and you can see it almost started to show some hints of bubbling up an eye feature perhaps on this infrared satellite. We haven't seen that yet. However, notice the flatness is starting to wear off a little bit as the system expands. The wind shear is letting up just enough to allow Michael to get close to hurricane strength. And again, the center is about 100 miles south of the western tip of Cuba, and that is continuing on off towards the north, and it'll eventually bend north-northwest as it moves into the Gulf of Mexico. You can see that even better on the wind shear chart. See this shear blowing right over the top of it? That westerly wind shear has kind of kept Michael lopsided, but because it strengthens so much, almost to a hurricane despite that, the thinking is that as the shear lessens as Michael moves north, it will exceed hurricane strength and then some, which is why it's going to be a powerful hurricane, it looks like, by the time it makes landfall. Not to mention waters are still very warm, very hot and muggy. Florida, the Gulf, it might be early October, but down there you're in the tropics. As of right now, there is some nasty weather in the Florida Keys, Marathon, Key West. Mariners, I would not head out this morning, at least not in the next couple of hours, as we've got some thunderstorms moving in. This is all around the periphery of Michael, far out, so we're starting to get some indication of wet weather in South Florida, and it will be heavy rainfall even if it is a fast-moving storm. Now, what makes Michael so dangerous isn't just that it could become a strong hurricane, but the storm surge. As of right now, the forecast has up to 11 feet of storm surge, Indian Pass, Crystal River. 4 to 6 from Crystal River to Anclote River. Okaloosa, Walton County, Indian Pass. Tampa Bay, 2 to 4 feet. You can see this whole area here is very, very susceptible because when a storm moves in, you get that right side of the storm and that water pushes up. The reason we did not have that horrific storm surge last year with Hurricane Irma was because if you recall, Irma moved over the Keys and then it moved right into Naples. Okay, it took a very odd track like that. So a lot of the storm surge was buffered into these Everglades areas here, Cape Sable, that region. Had Irma moved further out than in, we would have seen significant water rises, Cape Coral, Charlotte Harbor, areas like that. So what the fear is with Michael is if Michael does directly slam right into areas of Pensacola, Apalachicola, somewhere down here in the Big Bend region, we're talking about the threat that storm surge could really just surge, no pun intended, right into areas here of the Big Bend of Florida. And trust me, 6 to 11 feet as of right now, that is very, very bad. So if you're in a low-lying area, listen to your emergency officials when that call does come to start evacuations. Now, for all the people worried, why is this happening? Let me tell you, this is nothing new. You could see October 25th of 1921, we had a devastating major hurricane, the 1921 Tampa storm, before they named them. It came in just north of Tampa, caused a devastating storm surge in Tampa Bay, and that came right out of the Caribbean. 1944, Category 2, right out of the Caribbean. That was October 19th. And then October 8th, it was literally October 8th, this date, in 1946, a Category 1 roared directly into Tampa Bay. And then, of course, remember storms like Hurricane Opal, 1995. That was the first week of October. That was a major hurricane in Pensacola. Remember the surge from Opal? So when we're dealing with these Category 1, 2, 3 hurricanes in October, they happen. Here's the Canadian model. You can see this was as of 0Z. It brings Michael up and out very quickly right into the areas of the Panhandle closer to Mississippi. And look at, in about a week or so, another system follows behind. Remember, in the Western Caribbean, it is hot, it is muggy, it is time for hurricanes. Just because it's later in the year and we get these fronts doesn't mean that one of these fronts can't grab a storm like Michael and pull it right north, and that's what we're likely to see. I did want to note the H-Wharf model has been a little bit disturbing. Look at the wind speeds that it brings up. It brings Michael to a Category 4 hurricane prior to landfall in the Panhandle. Hopefully that does not occur, but right now the Hurricane Center is forecasting a 2 or a 3. And that's just wind-wise. Remember, it's the water that kills. You could hide from the wind, can't run from the water. And I did want to note as well, this is the newer GFS model, and it also shows a system in about a week following behind Michael. It brings Michael right up and right into the Panhandle. Is a very strong storm. Again, just pretty straightforward. We've got high pressure over the western Atlantic flowing like that. We've got troughiness coming in like that, and that's all combining to pull Michael out of the Caribbean into the Gulf, into Florida before it turns up and out, and it could be a strong hurricane at landfall. Again, if you live anywhere from, say, Mobile Bay on down to Naples, I want you on the alert. And of course, follow the National Hurricane Center. Right now we have that hurricane watch from areas of Alabama, Florida border down to Suwannee River. And we are going to watch Michael strengthen into a hurricane later today and move into the Gulf of Mexico. Be on alert. Stay tuned to your local officials just in case Michael comes your way. You can see almost a hurricane in the Western Caribbean. I'm Mike Naso, and I will talk to you guys next time.